Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to this public meeting of the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Thank you to the cabinet members who are here and the board who is here. We have two board members participating remotely, Board Member Sika and Board Member Kennedy. Thank you for joining us. And what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to convene a closed executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation, negotiations and/or property, as well as character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual and/or deployment of security personnel devices or.
I can do that for you.
Thank you, Christine.
Okay, I move that we go into closed executive session on August 2nd at 2022 at 5:04 p.m. for the purpose of litigation, negotiation, and/or property, character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual and/or deployment of security personnel devices or systems.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
A motion by Board Member Sweat and seconded by Board Member Williams. We'll go ahead and vote on the motion, beginning with you, Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
All right. It's now, still 5:04. We'll go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm there for you.
We're live. We're still short. All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody. I apologize for the small accommodations. These are temporary while our board room is being rebuilt, but we're happy to have you here. We always love having people come to hear our board meetings and hear the work of the district, and we appreciate your feedback and input. I'd like to welcome all of our association reps. Thank you for being here. Thank you. I just appreciate all the support you give to our students. I've asked our student board member, this is her first meeting in person, Lydia May, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Lydia.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you so much, Lydia. Put you to work right out of the gate. Thank you. All right, the next item we've got up for on our agenda is the swearing in of our business administrator, and for that we have our county clerk, Sherry Swenson, to come forward. Is Sherry here? Where's no, not yet.
Jerry Swenson?
Oh, who's here to do the?
No, it's done by the county clerk.
We've got it. Is Sherry?
No, no.
No. Okay. What we will do is maybe postpone the swearing in until Sherry gets here, and we'll move ahead. Thank you. We usually don't have so many people in our boardroom, and so it's easier to see who's here. But really lovely to see you all. Thank you. And before we move ahead with our agenda tonight, the board would like to share a brief update regarding our superintendent. We have heard from so many of you, and we are grateful that you share our concern for the well-being of our schools, our employees, and most importantly, our students. We know you have questions, and while we do not have a resolution tonight, as a board, we feel it is important to share as much as possible while respecting the rights and dignity of all of our employees and also follow our board statement of ethics. That statement of ethics, which we review every year, requires that we don't disclose the details of closed meeting discussions regarding confidential personnel matters. However, I can share that Dr. Gadsden's contract requires that we participate in mediation of any disputes, that Superintendent Gadsden has requested mediation, and that the board plans to participate in that process in good faith. We are committed to transparency, and if there ever were to be a termination of either of our two direct employee contracts, that would be done in an open and public meeting. As we remain focused on having a successful school year for our students and staff, I want to reaffirm to our district families and to our community that the board has full faith and confidence in our district and school administrators, our educators and staff, and we will be ready for our students to return to school on August 30th. Our students are our number one priority, and you have our commitment that this personnel matter will not impact our students' day-to-day educational experience. Thank you to our school leaders and employees for making sure we remain focused on serving our students and providing them with the best education possible. To our employees, we know that you are getting questions and that this is a distraction from the important work you do each day to serve our students. Thank you for your work on behalf of our students and your dedication to a successful start to the school year. I am confident that our students are in good hands. Thank you. All right, the next item is our consent agenda, and I would be open to entertaining a motion on the consent agenda.
President Ford, I move that we approve the consent agenda, including items number 1, purchasing and accounting reports, A, purchasing report, B, purchasing report Excel format, C, budget report from May 2022, D, budget report from June 2022, payment voucher report from May 2022, F, payment voucher report from June 2022, G, school's financial report, May 31st, 2022, H, school financial report, June 30th, 2022, Number 2, Human Resources Services report. 3, minutes from board meeting June 1st. 4, meeting minutes from June 7th. 5, meeting minutes from June 21st. And 6, minutes from the board meeting July 7th, 2022. Number 7, Early Learning Plan or Professional Learning Grant. 8, West High Rebuild Feasibility Study. Number 9, Highland High Rebuild Feasibility Study. And number 10, Hearing Officer Recommendation, Case G4-0122.
Thank you for the motion, Nate. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Nate and seconded by Christy. Do I have any discussion to the motion? There's a lot on this consent agenda, and I just want to make sure everybody takes an opportunity to read through what's on that consent agenda. There's a lot of big things and exciting things, and I certainly want to recognize the work that's got into that, and in particular, Dr. Hall, as well as Dr. Malouf, and was it Holly? Sorry, Holly, if you're here. The work that went into the early learning plan. I really appreciate that. Last year, we pulled it off consent and went through it in detail so the board would be familiar with it, something that we need to approve annually. There's a lot of really good information about the good work that's happening with early learning, and so I want to say thank you to you for that. Any other discussion? If there's no other discussion to the consent agenda, we'll go ahead and vote on the consent agenda, beginning with Precinct 1 and Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you. And we will move right along with our agenda. And next up is our request to speak. I'm going to read a statement that the board asks me to read every time we do request to speak. And then I will also remind you that we have our Truth and Taxation hearing tonight, which is time certain for 7 p.m. tonight. The board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during public comment portion of the meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our board rules governing your comments. The time may not be used to air complaints concerning bidding, contracts, employment, or personnel issues, to criticize or defame district employees, or to make complaints for which other avenues for redress exist. Time may not be used by employees or their representatives to circumvent formal communication channels or establish grievance or negotiation procedures. The total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with individual presentations limited to 3 minutes and group presentations limited to 5 minutes. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the board from deliberating or taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with the speaker on the topic discussed. So thank you, and we'll go ahead and move to this request to speak sign-up sheet, and the first person to address the board will be Ms. Janetta Williams from the NAACP, and Janetta, you're representing a group, yes. So we'll give you 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. I speak this evening as president of the NAACP Salt Lake Branch and Tri-State Conference of Idaho, Nevada, and Utah. As a civil rights organization founded in 1909, it is my obligation to speak out when I see injustices. Civil rights ensure that no person in a democracy is treated unequally. The assumptions, stereotypes, and intentional actions, positive or negative, we make towards others based on identity labels like race, religion, age, gender, sexual orientation, or ability, because our explicit associations are stored in our subconscious. We may act on our biases without even realizing it. Employment discrimination is against the law. Unconscious bias, also known as implicit bias, refers to a person's attitude or beliefs about others that happen without the person being aware of it. These biases are based on common facts or your past experience that may affect how you think of things now. Another word is prejudice, an opinion against a group or an individual based on insufficient facts and unusually unfavorable and intolerant. Bias, very similar but not as extreme as prejudice. Someone who is biased usually refuses to accept that there are other views other than their own. This situation with the Salt Lake School Board and District is extremely disturbing. What is happening with the Salt Lake City School Board is clearly racism. I challenge the board to explore the identity and to identify your own implicit bias by taking an implicit association test. To overcome implicit bias throughout the Salt Lake City School District, consider implementing an equity lens, a checklist that helps to consider your blind spots and biases. Racism is the form of oppression based on race. Unlike discrimination, oppression takes into account power, who is positioned in the Salt Lake School District to hold power and who is positioned not to hold power in the school district. What we've been looking at is institutional racism, the policies, practices, procedures, and culture of the school district that work better for white people and cause harm to people of color, often inadvertently. There appears to be a district school level coalition against Dr. Gatson and the district leadership members. We've seen complaints coming through, and it is disturbing. There's a structural racism in the Salt Lake School District and unethical behavior. The history, culture, and current reality of racism across the school district when the institutional racism of multiple institutions overlaps to form a web of racism impacting people and communities of color. There was an incident for a black administrator experiencing a racial picture left in their workplace. Instead of responding in a cultural sensitive manner, the district initiated an observation of the employee by placing a camera in the office. There was no resolution from this issue. The Salt Lake School Board is in the middle of a pandemic. I'm not referring to COVID-19 or the monkeypox, but a blatant racial discrimination pandemic. Disparities exist for many reasons, from institutional policies that under-resource schools in communities of color, to discriminate hiring and employment practices, to both the explicit and subversive ways that people of color have been kept out of positions of authority in major institutions in government. The NAACP will point out other instances of discrimination. Learn to recognize and understand your own privilege. Validate the experience and feelings of people of color. Challenge the colorblind ideology. The NAACP would like the discrimination against Dr. Timothy Gatson and others to stop immediately. We are committed to taking action and educating others on how to end racism. The NAACP is equipped to train and empower educators to dismantle patterns of racism and injustice in schools and communities. And I have a signed copy for each school member because I didn't read through everything, but it's all extremely important. And I also have a copy for the media. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams.
Want me to take that from you?
Thank you. All right, next on our list for requests to speak is Mr. Curtis Linton. Curtis, if you want to join us.
Thank you very much for letting me be here tonight. I speak both as a resident of this district, as a parent of students who attend these schools, also as a person who spent my entire career studying how good schools function. I have spent years following superintendents, other district leaders, school leaders, seeing what they do. Schools depend on good leadership. But if there's one thing I realized, I spent so much time studying hired leaders, but I haven't spent my time studying the effectiveness of school boards, the role that the school boards have on effective governance in schools. Not only effective governance, but on the opportunity for every single student to receive equal opportunity, a fair opportunity within their education. And this is hard for me to say because I've spent time talking to many of you. I've spent years following what this district has done. But if there's one common trait with what the district faces, potentially, if Gadsden is released, the fourth superintendent in 4 years, the common factor in that is this school board. It is high time. It is your time, actually, to embrace the highest of ethics, not the narrowness of ethics, the highest of transparency. I want to make one thing clear. I'm not speaking in defense of Gadsden tonight, and I'm not speaking in support of him. I'm speaking as a call to this school board to get real about what it has done. Do you have an exit plan after you resolve Dr. Gadsden? Do you have a plan which will adequately guarantee equal opportunity to all students across this district? Are you engaging in a tax vote tonight to preserve one East Side school at the expense of students who live on the West Side? Get real about what this board has to do. It is your time. Yes, I'm running for the board. I ask every night, do I actually want to engage in a board that may be facing a DOJ-imposed settlement, some sort of consent decree? I professionally work with schools who are in that situation. It is not easy, it is not fun, and it is not cheap. It will remove your ability as a board to hire at least one of the 2 hires that you mentioned. You'll have to get that approved. Make the changes now so you do not end up in a place where this board's focus is on resolving legal matters rather than guaranteeing an equal opportunity for each and every student every day. That is my call to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linton. All right, next up on our request to speak is Maggie Cummings.
Are you guys nervous? Because I am. Thank you. My name is Maggie Cummings. I'm the principal of Meadowlark Elementary, a highly impacted Title I school on the far west side of the district. I'm here in hopes of shifting our attention back to students, families, and our work on equity. I have 3 examples that I'd like to talk about. First, lost in the conflict, or the conflicting evidence of who paid for the Grand Canyon University trip, is the fact that the trip was organized to break up an important equity opportunity for our students, namely Utah's highly successful and economically sound concurrent enrollment program. Students who participate in concurrent enrollment are 3 times as likely to attend college than those who do not, even when you take into account income status. The purpose of the trip was to form a partnership with a private, for-profit, Christian, primarily online institution for concurrent enrollment. The biggest losers, had this partnership gone through, would have been our students. 2, Ms. Williams and Mr. Evans, in Ms. Williams and Mr. Evans' defense of the superintendent, they have lauded his listening tours. Yes, he held them. But let's look at the facts through the lens of students and the community. Town halls are traditionally attended by privileged community members. Our area's town hall at Northwest was attended by fewer than 15 people. There was no attempt to find a more culturally relevant way to reach our community. When he came to talk to schools, our school, my faculty was very excited. But then, after it happened, while it was happening, he seemed indifferent to what our teachers had to say. Worse, when our teachers asked why was he cutting teachers while at the same time increasing district administration, he abruptly and forcefully shut down the conversation, telling them they didn't understand. Teachers left feeling unheard. Third, at the core of our work in equity is respect and inclusive collaboration in decision-making. Things like the written agreement, shared governance, SIC, SEC embody that work. They are what set us apart as a district and allow us to be responsive to our diverse community. These things have been under attack. by the superintendent's top-down approach to leadership. In conclusion, a year ago, like every other administrator I know, I was excited that our new superintendent would sharpen our focus on students and the community through example, advocacy, and policy. Today, it's clear that that's not where our attention is being focused. Yesterday, I had serious second thoughts about my comments. But then Dottie Uman, in her keynote to administrators, called on us to be bold for students. So as scared as I am to be here today, I'm trying to be bold. Please, help us get back to forefronting students in the community.
Coming. The next person up to speak is, and you maybe help me with your pronunciation, David Heaty?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Heaty, okay, good. Welcome, David and Mr. Heaty. I'm happy to have you join us. Have a seat and let's. Okay.
Good evening, elected members of the Salt Lake School Board. I thank you for the opportunity to speak on an important community issue. I'm here today as a concerned Salt Lake City resident, a parent of a student entering Salt Lake schools, a husband of a teacher in the district, and an academic myself. I'm here in gratitude and in hope. In gratitude, I thank all of the teachers in the district and my wife and her colleagues. I thank the district staff, administrators, and those members of the board who have been so brave this year as we've faced so many things together. A global pandemic that has disrupted and challenged our traditional education experience. Multiple school shootings that have disrupted and challenged our students' sense of safety. And of course, the disruption and challenges of having 3 different superintendents in 4 years. I would like to thank especially Dr. Timothy Gadsden, our current superintendent, and the team he has assembled, who in only a year, in spite of these and other disruptions and challenges, have already had many successes. I actually reached out to Dr. Gadsden to welcome him this past year. By sheer coincidence, he had last worked as associate superintendent in Minnesota, near where I grew up and where I have friends and family whom have very positive things to say about him. I had hoped he'd be welcomed warmly as a highly regarded and credentialed leader our schools need. I also am still fairly new to the city myself, and I know what it's like to come here with an outside perspective, eager to join the community and its aspirations. I moved here from New York after completing a master's degree in public health and a master's in education at Columbia University, where I continue to work today. And I felt then, and I feel now, Dr. Gadsden is an ally in a cause I believe in personally and professionally, a cause of equity, social justice, and transformation. So why am I here, and what do I ask of you all? I am here today to stand by Dr. Gadsden and the vibrant community and vision he and his team represent. I am here to ask the school board to not contribute further to any disruptions or challenges, for we have had so many, most shameful of which would be the challenge to Dr. Gadsden's tenure after only 1 year. I call unequivocally for the school board to fulfill its duty to reflect the community's continued support of Dr. Gadsden. I call for those here today who are not standing in solidarity with Dr. Gadsden to join me in examining our privilege, our prejudice, and our actions which are so visibly unjust. Our children are watching. We are at a pivotal moment where we are called to be anti-racist through action, because let's be honest, the active campaign by the district to disrupt and remove Dr. Gadsden during his brief time here includes racism. And if this campaign succeeds, what does that say about us? And what does that say about you?
Time.
Or today, perhaps I will just focus on gratitude and hope. The words of Board Vice President Nate Salazar are remembered. Dr. Gadsden is a model of the most important attributes our community told us they wanted. And I know we'll see great things from him here in the Salt Lake City School District. Thank you.
We have exactly 5 minutes before our time certain with the tax hearing. So if board's willing, we'll hear one more request to speak, and that's Mr. Robert Hamilton.
Good evening. My name is Robert Hamilton, and I'm a parent of 2 high school girls in the district, and I've been an active parent in the community throughout their time in the Salt Lake School District since they were in elementary school. We've gotten to know some of the best teachers, counselors, principals along the way, become a strong part of the parent community during this period of time, and because of our experiences and the solid education of our girls, I do want to express support for the board. The recent Tribune article by Robert Gerke laid out the issues for the public that we know as a community you cannot speak to as a board due to your public meeting rules and laws. There do appear to be valid concerns brought forward by the board to this body about this superintendency. We as parents in the school community are also aware of the retaliatory climate that has become the norm for our teachers and principals, and their voices appeared ignored by the superintendency, notably at the listening tours held across schools. This should never be the case, as parents, teachers, and principals should all be at the table and their voices should all be equal. As parents of the Salt Lake School District, we're also aware that the upcoming issues facing the board and superintendent include potential school closures due to dropping enrollment and teacher reductions, potential bonding, student recovery of academic achievement from the pandemic. Now more than ever, the Salt Lake School District needs strong and collaborative relationship with the superintendent to keep the focus on students and teachers and provide the highest standard of academic achievement possible. We encourage the board to separate from the current superintendent as soon as possible so we can move forward. Due to the serious concerns of questionable hires, we would also like to suggest the strengthening of the Human Resource Department with knowledgeable and committed staff so that what has happened this year will not happen or continue in the future. These are serious district issues and concerns, and we ask the board to move forward with searching for a new superintendent that can effectively meet the needs and issues before us. Again, the parents, we support the board. We are also relying on the board to set the standard for teachers and for administrators and ultimately for students, but also to be able to enact the proper discipline that the board is empowered to do to protect the district. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Got 2 more minutes. I can only go through the list of people who've signed up for a request to speak. Really what I'd like to do is suggest if we haven't gotten to you and you've signed up to a request to speak, if you want to email your comments to April Johnson at april.johnson@slcschools.org. She can forward those to the board, and we can even attach them to the minutes of the meeting so that there's a record of those comments. Now, I guess we have 1 minute before our Truth in Taxation hearing and for public comment on the proposed tax rate. So we'll wait till it turns to 7 o'clock exactly. Thank you. Thank you for those who are here. You're welcome to stay. We'd love to hear your input on the tax rate. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. So, okay, I think we'll do our tax hearing and then we'll do our swearing in. Let's invite Ms. Swenson to sit right here. All right. Thank you for being here. Okay, thank you. All right, do I have anybody who's here to speak to the board about the proposed tax rate? Alan, is there anything? All right, Mr. Harmon. I think you were our speaker at the last time we had a public hearing. Last time you spoke in favor of the proposed
I am still
budget.
speaking in favor. Mike Harmon, resident of Poplar Grove neighborhood, and I appreciate the board's support, or the board taking the motion to increase the taxes. I got my tax notice the other day, and I think it's like $6, and so that will certainly go a long way to support teachers and our students, and so I fully support the tax rate that you've set. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harmon. Do I have anybody? Oh, Mr. Chatterton.
Jeremy Chatterton, member of the Beacon Heights community, also principal at Highland High School, and my wife also works in the district as a teacher. I as well fully support the tax increase to support our schools, to support the work that we're trying to do in our buildings, and to make sure that our students have everything they need to be successful as we're moving forward through this and out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chatterton. Do I have any other public comment on the proposed tax rate? Okay, so that will conclude our public hearing on the tax rate, and we'll move to the next agenda item, which is action on the proposed tax rate. The board has a memo attached to that. Let's go ahead and take action on this, and then we'll move to the next. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Alan, do you want to, Business Administrator Kearsley, would you like to speak to the action?
Yes, so as noted on the attachment to the agenda, we're proposing a tax rate that exceeds the certified tax rate, enough to generate an additional $1.5 million for the next tax year. Those funds will be used for employee salary and benefit increases. So that's an increase from the certified tax rate of 0.000040, which, as shown on the attachment, for every $100,000 of assessed value of a home, that's an additional $2.20 per year. And for a business, for every $1 million of assessed of a business, that's an additional $40 a year. Are there any questions on that?
Any questions about this from the board? If there's none, let's go ahead and take action. I will, ready to entertain a motion on the proposed tax rate.
President Ford, I move that we accept the 2022-2023 proposed tax rate.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh, were you here to speak to the proposed tax rate? Yes. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Come on.
we'll
Come
rescind
on
that
up.
for now.
Thank you.
You just sit right here at this chair.
So are we allowed to ask question and
Oh, yeah.
try? Yeah. So just trying to see why the taxes went up and what's the reason why it's up.
That's a good question. I'm going to let our business administrator answer that.
Right, so what the district is proposing is an increase to the certified tax rate for an additional revenue of $1.5 million, which will go towards employee salary and benefits. Your taxes may increase for two different reasons. Your assessed value may go up, and that's the district does not control your assessed value. So the increase that we are proposing is above and beyond the certified tax rate. So as I noted, for a home, for every $100,000 of assessed value of a home, it's an initial $2.20 a year. So you can just do the math to say, all right, if my home's $200,000, then it's $4.40 and so forth. So those are additional for additional salaries and benefits to help keep up with inflation.
So that's the only reason why it's going to go up that much? Okay, well, obviously no one it's happy with that because, you know, everything it's already expensive and the wages is the same. The wages never changed. So if the wage does not change, why would I pay more tax on my property? Right? So that's that's what I want to understand, why I have to pay a lot more a year
Yeah.
for the wages is still the same, you know. 'Cause
Your wages or wages of district employees?
of all employees and all the people
Oh.
who live in the residence, you know.
Okay.
It's just, you know, then what would be next year then? You know?
So Christy, did you want to respond?
No,
or saw
well,
you
first off,
leaning?
thank you for coming
Yeah, I
tonight.
appreciate it.
Because it's rare that we get our constituents, our taxpayers to come. Sorry. And so when you look at your tax notice, and I think it's so great that you're bringing it to look at it, there's the district taxes and then there's the city taxes, right?
Right.
And so that increase is all combined right there. So when we were thinking, what we wanted to do was to be able to provide so we could keep up with inflation, because one of the things that we keep hearing is that our employees can't even afford to live in the city.
Right.
And so to be able to, provide more money, that's specifically, what the tax raise is for, is to provide more money, but they are also getting an increase in their salaries and benefits. So there's a tell me again.
4.25.
4.25% of an increase in their salaries that they'll get. And then also this 5%, the money that's through the taxes goes into that to help pay for that. And so we're trying to keep up, with making sure that we're competitive in the district, to make sure that we can attract teachers, to work for us, or even administrators. But it's getting a little bit harder. I mean, we used to be able to say that Salt Lake District was the highest paying district in the state, but we no longer are. We're probably number 6, in the state right now. And so with inflation, we're just trying to figure out how not to tax you to death, because we knew that the city was also going to be raising their taxes significantly this year.
Right.
And so we were trying to figure out how we do that at the bare minimum, but yet still be able to provide that living wage, that we need to do for our employees, and also to be able to attract more of our teachers into the city, so that they could live closer to their schools instead of being outside of the city. Does that help?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if we're trying to make things affordable for people, we should have less tax in order to make things affordable to live in the housing.
Right.
If you charge more and then the landlord will charge more, everything goes up.
Yeah.
We need to reduce it.
It's so true. And I think that one of the things we've been talking about with the city is how do we address the affordable housing issue here in the city? Because to be really honest, right, I mean, there aren't a lot of affordable homes right now, and also rentals, and that a lot of the development that's going on in the city right now is not what you would call affordable homes for families.
Right.
And so that's something else that I think that we're really paying attention to, at the board level. And so I know that, looking at, yes, we are increasing it. You're absolutely right. But we're trying to do it thoughtfully and not so that it's punitive, in any way. So I think that, coming and talking with us and working together to try and figure out how we don't out-tax our people in the city. Because in my area, I have a lot of fixed incomes. And every time we propose a tax increase, it's really hard for me, because I know about all my families that I hear from that are on fixed incomes.
Right, yeah. So is there any vote that we can vote on disagreeing on that increase?
Mm-hmm.
And I just go online to do it? Or-
So I think that's a really great question, don't you think? Because usually what we do is we set this setting for our taxpayers to be able to come and tell us how you feel. And I will tell you that there's been times in the past that it has swayed, how board members feel. But I will also tell you that we've been talking about this for months, at our board meetings, so that we knew that we wanted to go through tooth and taxation. We knew that we wanted to be very specific, because I think it would be irresponsible for us to raise your taxes and you not know where that money was going. Exactly. And so that's why I felt like that this tax increase that we're doing is very specific, to our employees.
So that will go only straight to employee.
Yep. And so your question about how do you voice your opinion, just as you are today.
This is how.
And then also the area that you live in, one of us represents you. And so where do you live?
Rose Park.
Okay, so that is Bryce.
Bryce,
And, to be able to reach out to Bryce and say, okay, tell me about this increase, tell me what's going on, because that makes a difference. I won't speak for Bryce, but I'm guessing he would say that.
So this increase, that means there's not enough money we have, or it's not why is that increase? It's just the government or that area doesn't have enough money, that's why you want more money so we can pay things?
So it's not specific to one, it's not just specific to Rose Park, it's specific to our city, our district as a whole. And as I think you were walking in when some of our employees were speaking up and saying, we're advocating for this money, we need we need to raise our compensation. Christy, Board Member Sweat, also shared, I forgot my point where I was going with that, I apologize. But also shared that our employees are sharing with us that they can't afford to live in the district. And so this vote also is advocating for our employees so that they can be attracted to our district to continue to support our students and our families that live here as well.
Thank you, Bryce. We never raise taxes without lots of consideration.
Right.
And we set our budget and voted on our budget in June. And in that budget, it includes a salary increase for our employees. In order to pay for that, we have to raise taxes.
Yeah,
And we try to not do very much.
right.
Every little bit counts. And we're gonna take that every little bit and put it together and give it to our employees. And we've tried really hard to make sure that that salary increase gets spread across the district so that our hourly employees have raises, our contracted employees have raises, that we're working incrementally as best we can. We didn't get there this year. You could talk to some of our hourly employees. We didn't get there this year. We aren't quite at the living wage we want to be at, but we are committed to keeping our employees being paid at the market rate. And we would love to pay them more. They're worth more. And
Right.
so we just want to do as much as we can, but not making the burden too heavy. And I appreciate you coming and talking to us. I really, truly do. And I would encourage you to reach out to your board member, because you have somebody awesome in Board Member Williams who will take the time to listen and
Yes.
hear your concerns.
Yes, yeah.
So make sure you make that connection with him.
Yeah, so this increase employee only just for the people who works for the government,
Just for the school district.
Just for the school district.
And we have what, about 3,500, 4,000 employees?
Employees, okay.
So we're I think the 5th or 6th largest employer in the city. But we do our best to take care of our people.
Okay. Well, that's everything, and I have more questions I can ask you.
Awesome.
Please do.
I hope you will.
Please do.
And then I hope you'll get involved.
Yes.
Yes, please do.
Yep, help us out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That was a great conversation. Thank you, Christy, and thank you for being here.
It really was.
Bryce, you had made a motion
Yes.
to adopt this tax rate for the 2022-23 school year, or tax year, or whatever.
Yes.
You want to make the motion again? Sorry, I'm just...
Yes, of course. President Ford, I move that we accept the 2022-2023 proposed tax rate.
Thank you. Do I have a
I will
second to the motion?
Second.
I will second.
Second, Catherine. Okay. Any discussion to this motion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion, which is to adopt the 2022-2023 proposed tax rate. This time we'll begin with Precinct 2 and Board Member Sika.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to backtrack on our agenda and apologize to Sherry Swenson. Thank you so much for being here, and apologize to sending you to the wrong location, I think, if I'm hearing correctly. I appreciate you being here. I think it's a good thing. It's fun to have you here and to swear in our business administrator for his 2-year contract. I'll turn the time to you and for that.
Okay. Alan, if you'll just stand and raise your right hand, repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that my full name is,
that my full name is Alan Kersley.
I swear to obey, support, and defend
I swear to obey, support, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and perform the duties of my position
and perform the duties of my position
as Salt Lake City School District Business Administrator
as Salt Lake City School District Business Administrator
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sherry. We appreciate you coming and being here, and thank you for being patient with us. No, I know. I'm sorry.
How to get in.
When I get on autopilot, I go straight there too.
I didn't get the new location, but
We will.
I'm here and that's good.
Thank you so much, and we will miss having you here to do our swearing
Oh.
in, but thank you for your service to the city. We appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
All right, Business Administrator, do you want to, take a moment of personal privilege and make a speech?
Thank you.
Man of few words.
Thank you. All right, that speech was almost as good as Board Member Sika's speech at graduation. All right. Next up on our agenda is our reports, and we have a Title IX report, and so I'd like to invite this. I'm gonna do awesome. I'd like to welcome, and I always pronounce your name wrong, Missy, our District Athletic Director, and Tina Hatch, who's our District Title IX Director. Thank you for being here, and then Ms. Christina Kindle, who's our Executive Director of Policy and Legal Services.
Here for support.
Okay.
Yes, use your microphones.
Yes. So, as you just reported, and I don't have a clicker. Is Sam moving this on?
Yes.
Okay. So, this is the 50th anniversary of Title IX this year. Title IX just celebrated its birthday, so it's kind of a relevant time to be talking about Title IX. As you know, the legislature this year passed House Bill 420, which requires us to come and sit with you tonight and discuss our Title IX compliance within our high schools in the district. They require a few things of us. One of those is to tell you how many sports we have sex designated, so male and female sports, the amount that we are spending per sport, and the amount per student within that amount, an evaluation and comparison of our district facilities for practice and games, and to report on any discrepancies of greater than 10%, and how we're going to address that, and the efforts that we're making to be compliant with Title IX. Title IX, if people don't understand what that is here, is from 1972 on, we have had Title IX to direct us to not discriminate based on sex in our school programs and activities, and that covers a wide range of things. Athletics is one of the major things that falls under that umbrella of Title IX. So Sam, if you'll move to the next slide. These are the district sports that we offer that are sports under the Utah High School Sports and Activities Association, UHSAA. We have a pretty even number of sports offered for male and female students. And we included cheerleading because that is the true co-ed sport that we have in our district. Our numbers look good as far as how many sports we offer for each of our genders. Sam?
It's working, Ellen. All right. Our this report right here on our we go. Shows our number of our students, and this is broke down by school. Also, you see on the blue line that shows how many students are in each school, and male and female students, and then how many are participating in them. And I was really pleased with the numbers of showing all three of our schools. Highland, on the male students, does have larger amounts, but they do have a big football team at the time, and also a big following in their track and field in male students. But we're not out of compliance when it comes down to our female athletes. And so I'm really pleased with how our numbers have come out and rolled out. And I think with cheer, this does not include our cheer competition right now. That will come into effect this year, and all of them will be under our competitive cheer. And that will raise our numbers. And so right now what you're seeing here is not in, our competitive cheer is not on this. In year 23-24 is when we'll bring boys volleyball in. And so with cheer, competitive cheer, that should offset our numbers for that. And I'll be coming back to you guys for approval on that. Remember also that these numbers can include 2 to 3 sport athletes. There's no way of really being able to pull a report down that shows, but it's less than 5% per school of where they may be competing in football and basketball, or football and wrestling, or maybe a 3-sport, go football, basketball, and track. So we do have those athletes that do that, boys and girls, so that's really great.
Yeah, so just to clarify, these numbers may be larger because it would triple count or double count a student.
Okay. That's why she's up here. To clarify for me. All right. So our next slide has also then our spending amount per school. And one of the things, each of the schools receive the same amount of money from the district. And we need to be mindful that this is a snapshot of just 1 year. Tina and I and Christina were pleased with this because it opened up a lot of it for us to be able to dig deeper, and also to know where we need to have some improvement in our areas here as in the district offices. Many of our schools had first-year coaches, and they didn't have some of the opportunities to sign up for tournaments or maybe camps that some of our others. So when you see some of our a little discrepancy in some of the spending, and that's because maybe they went to more camps than maybe their female counterparts did, or vice versa. You'll see on soccer, girls soccer, on all 3 of the schools, they do spend more, but they do also attend a lot more camps than what our boys attend. Every one of them have not gone over what you as a board have approved as our fee schedule, and that was really good news for us. And one of the things that we did change this year, we started doing in the fall, was the district now pays for our girls and boys golf green fees, because we don't have a place for them to participate the same way we do with our swimming. So that has taken a lot out of the budget. I mean, that's put in from the district, so that's not reflection in here either. So unless we've had to reimburse our coaches. Some of our teams also bought new uniforms, and causing increase in our student athlete spending. Also, some of our coaches, do you want to flip over to Highland?
Let's just wait for a second. So I think one of the things that we want to address as a panel, back one slide, Sam, is we do recognize there's a discrepancy between the amount of spending per student based on male sports versus female sports. So for male student athletes, it's $468 per student. For females, it's $270. So we're going to be talking later in the presentation about how we're creating a plan to address that discrepancy. So if you see it on the slide, we are aware of that discrepancy, and we're working towards creating plans to address that. So at schools where you see a greater than 10% discrepancy, we'll be talking about what plans we're going to be putting in place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great.
That will come down in the.
Okay, thank you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
board
I
members
just
have
thought that if we
questions
moved on, so they could, if those who are from Highland wanting to see it.
Yeah.
Also, that
And you can move on, Sam.
some of the budgets also are not, we do not have the budgets in here. So there's reflection. It doesn't reflect that maybe girls basketball at East would have money in their account where they're saving that money to be able to purchase new uniforms. So that doesn't reflect that inside of our report here, but that I just needed to bring that up to let you guys know that there is money. Some of the teams do have monies. I did also have reached out and been able now to have money or to have access to our TES system, which is where our team's money comes through that, so that we're able to go through and be able to look and see, one, in donations and also in spending and in our fees that are gathered. Tina will talk about that in a minute on our fees. And so I think all in all, with what we've been able to do.
And just so that you know, there
yeah.
are 2 sheets per school because we have some teams that have one coach, boys and girls in track, swimming, wrestling. In those sports, we have one coach. The students are all together, coached in the same season, and so the spending is not specific to male or female students.
So if you see that where we have our track and field, cross-country, swimming, and wrestling right now. Eventually, we would like to take the girls wrestling out and have a coach for them, to be able to fund a coach for them, but as we build the programs for that.
Okay, well, 2 more, Sam.
Well,
Go ahead.
Or do you want to?
well, I just didn't know if they wanted to at least look at what
Do you
West
want to
was.
look at those? Sorry.
They should probably look at what the West one was, if you could go back, yeah.
West High School is actually very near equal amounts. It's very, very close, within that 10%. It looks really good right now.
So we won't be doing a plan at West High, just to clarify.
Okay.
Because their spending is so close.
Right.
And again, this is the slide for when there's, where all the spending is coming out of one pot for boys and girls, so there's no differentiation.
And even though cheerleading is not in our regular numbers, we did put it in there just so you could see where the spending is within cheer and what we'll be looking at probably for our competitive cheer.
And one difference that you'll notice with West High School versus Highland and East is that West High School has a girls' drill team, which is something that adds to the spending and to the numbers for our female students
At West
High School.
Next slide, Sam.
Okay, so Missy and I have taken some time this year to tour the schools, to look at the facilities, the practice facilities, the facilities where they play games, to ensure things like there's, an equal space for female and male sports. Our lacrosse teams play on the same fields. Our soccer teams play on the same fields. Our baseball and softball teams look really good right now. We have dugouts, we have storage space, some things that another district has been looked at before for not having facilities for both. We looked at locker room facilities to make sure that we have locker rooms available for all of our students. We looked at the schedules. Those schedules are set up through the regions that our student athletes play in. And so there are some differences because we have one school that is in 6A and 2 schools that are in 5A. So the regions are different. And so the scheduling looks a little bit different. But we are aiming for equity in scheduling so that the students have the same ability to have a good crowd for a home game. We do have cheerleaders available wherever possible. The cheer team can even split and go to 2 different locations. So we're looking at that as well. Our fee schedules are one way that we are able to say, we can't have one team spending this high amount like boys basketball and girls basketball not able to spend that same amount. So that's something that helps us with equity. We do have school buses that take our students to all of their competitive events. For golf and for swimming, the students practice at off-site locations, and we don't have buses for those, but we do for all of their other events. We do have trainers available at each of our schools through Tosh, and they're available for all of our student athletes. Now, football, basketball, they tend to get a little more of the time from those trainers. However, if we have a cheerleader who has an injury, they can go to that trainer and get the services that they need. So we have those for all of our students. We do have advertising. We ask that our schools advertise on the marquee for all events, male, female sports, and that they, in their morning announcements, announce for all of the sports as well. And fundraising is equitable. We make sure that they have the same opportunities. Now, the coaches do determine what they do. And so one coach may do a lot of fundraising where another coach doesn't do as much. We'll kind of discuss what we're going to do moving forward to look at some of the fundraising and donations. And we have requested that donations go through the Education Foundation, and that whenever there's a donation of more than $500, Missy is made aware of that donation. It is in our administrative procedures. Not a request. Unfortunately, we've found a few gaps as we've looked at this where those reports don't happen. And that is one of the things that we're going to be looking at moving forward.
I would just like to bring up on the facilities. I do have to give Paul Schulte credit where credit is due. Is he here? When Paul was put down, not like a dog.
I thought that was just a surgery.
Oh, God. Oh, gee. My inner voice just came out. When Paul was put in the position and leaving from Highland High School, one of the things he did see was the inequities between girls and boys in a lot of our facilities, and one of those was softball and baseball. Our boys' baseball, Highland played for 20-plus years up in Sugar House Park, having to, holes and stuff in the grass, and so he was able to get a great facility at Highland for baseball. In the meantime, he went around and he made sure that all the girls' softball fields were the same. They had the same sand and markings, and our covered facilities in all of it. So I just needed to give a shout out to him that when he was placed in this position, he was able to bring us into Title IX compliance that way. And that's also including the locker rooms, many of the locker rooms, because he's been able to go through and make sure that they were fitted, that boys didn't have a better locker room than our girls. So shout out to Paul.
The facilities are beautiful, Paul. Thank you for what you do.
And weight rooms, we probably ought to mention that as well. There had been some conversations about, well, only, one team can use this weight room. That's not the case. We're pushing forward and making sure that all of our students have access to our weight rooms and to all of the equipment there. So that's an important piece as well. Sam, you can, okay. So moving forward, Missy and I are going to meet with, and I see some of our administrators here, we'll be meeting with the administrators and the athletic directors at East High School and Highland High School so that we can ensure that these numbers next year are better numbers, so that we can look at the causes of those numbers being so disparate, and we can address that. We're going to focus on fundraising and donations. It's really important that there are some big fundraising efforts for big teams. Those efforts may not be the same for smaller teams, and that football is specifically one of the biggest, and they can raise the most funds, and donations can come in during those fundraisers, and we need to be made aware of those. And that's one of the gaps that we have recognized as we've done this, and that we'll be addressing as we move forward. We will continue, yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. And I think one of the things that we're talking about is really having conversations with our donors about Title IX implications for those donations, and making them aware of the constraints that we're under, and asking them to ensure that their donation can be used equitably for all our teams. So it, or having some limits on what we can accept if it's going to have Title IX implications that would result in these numbers becoming more disparate. So it's going to be a conversation not only like at the district level, but with our donors and with Mr. Yapias as well and the foundation, so everyone can understand that when they're taking donations that are targeted for a specific team, what those implications would be, and hoping to ensure that we can get on top of that from all the levels.
Well, and that conversation has to include principals, because when those donations are received, a principal might say, I have some discretionary spending, I can offset that. But that's going to be, a bigger conversation and part of that whole process. And so it's really important that those donations are reported to administrators at the school and to us, and to Missy specifically, so that we can address that. As you may or may not know, we have conducted yearly athletic interest surveys with our students in 8th through 11th grade. And it's been interesting to watch some of the talk on there change a little bit. For instance, last year we had a high number of students who said they didn't participate because they couldn't afford to, which meant that we were failing at telling students that there were fee waivers available so that they can participate. This year that number is much lower, so it looks like those efforts have been effective. And so that's a great tool for us, not just to see if we're meeting the needs of our students, but to know where we have gaps in our communication with our families. So that was a big topic this year.
And I have to say, we send this out in May, and the AG's office has even requested our survey because we've been the leader in the whole state on our interest survey.
Yeah. So, and this goes back to compliance with the federal Title IX obligations. That's how we ensure. So some of this is specifically related to House Bill 460 for our compliance in that regard, but compliance with federal Title IX requires that one way we can comply is by having this interest survey that was, the basis of that lawsuit that other school districts got in trouble for because we were doing the interest survey long before they were. And so as part of that settlement for the lawsuit, the AG's office reached out to our school district to model what other school districts' interest surveys would be. So, but this specific piece is how we ensure compliance with federal Title IX.
Right. Theirs looks different than House Bill 420. There's a 3-prong test, and this is the 3rd prong, this interest survey. It helps us to be in compliance with the 3rd prong. You need to meet one. So that's what we were talking about there. We will, again, we've addressed the donations. We're going to be looking at those very carefully. Training. So each year, our coaches across the board, every coach, no matter what team and what gender, they have to take the same training from the state, concussion training, CPR first aid, those types of things. We also do non-discrimination and anti-bullying training, and we intend to do that this month with our ADs and with all of our coaches. We have required them to do that training. And so I will be working with Missy to make sure that that happens. We also, Missy gets training through, name your organization.
NIAAA, the National Interscholastic Athletic Association.
And I get training that's provided by the Association for Title IX Administrators, ATIXA. And it discusses the 3-prong test, the different things that we should be doing as a district to make sure that we're in compliance with Title IX. And we're going to see probably a lot of language around Title IX in the next little while as they're proposing some changes to their regulations, including protections for students based on gender identity and sexual orientation. So you'll probably see more about that in the news. And that's something that we'll also follow along with and keep up with. And we do investigate concerns. If someone brings a concern to us, I investigate, and Missy is always assisting me with getting information that I need for that.
Next slide, Sam. Oh, he hit the button. Okay, sorry. All right, our plan for 22-23 is we're going to be proactively monitoring programs and the spending. And as I said, I've been given access now to be able to get in and follow and make sure that our teams are fairly treated with donations as well as how our spending is going. Increased Title IX communication with our school ADs and our coaches. I have a meeting with our ADs 2 times a month with our where we meet a couple of hours on a Wednesday, and we bring up a lot of this type of information also. And so there will be training that will be done in there with them, along with our Title IX training for our coaches and our ADs. And then we'll continue our interest surveys, and I'll refer back to what Tina and Christine already talked about, and that was about our Title IX trainings along with our G19s and our G20 trainings that each of our coaches have, that Tina does give to also to them.
And I think, I want to take a moment to say that we were a little behind the 8 ball in terms of getting this presentation done, because I made the mistake of not knowing that there weren't 2 board meetings in August. And so we were planning for the second board meeting in August, which of course there isn't one. And so we had to put this together, but we really are looking for feedback from the board in terms of what you would like in this presentation. This bill is new, and this has to be an annual presentation to the board. So if there's something we didn't present to you tonight that you would like to see next year, we would really appreciate that feedback as to, what we can do to better inform you of what's happening in our school regarding Title IX athletics. So feel free to give us any comments.
Thank you so much.
So I assume there isn't any questions, correct?
Yeah, we always have questions, but we're going to start with our student board member. Lydia, go ahead.
Hi. First of all, thank you for coming to speak to us today. I have one question and then I have a comment. So first, where do the athletic surveys go out to?
We put them out through Qualtrics, through our survey platform that we have, and it goes through the student emails that come through Power School.
Okay. Then with that, I would probably have, I would recommend trying to reach out the surveys through other mechanisms as well to make sure that you're getting the highest rates of answering, because I think there's a lot of students, especially students who might not be as connected with their school system, who wouldn't look at their email, or if they did get the email, wouldn't necessarily click on it, go out of their way to take the survey. And so if you could do other methods of data collection to try to get access to more students, you might get a more representative sample.
Thanks, Lydia. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah. We always want to make
We
sure
have
we're
done
getting
that
everybody.
in the past where we did take them to the PE classes, and but because of COVID, we ended up going through this process, and hopefully then next year we could do this again where we take it back through our PE classes, because that seems to be where we're able to grab a large number of kids at one time.
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Maybe it doesn't need to be either or either. So.
Right, and just so you know, they have to be anonymous. These are anonymous surveys, so, we do send them out, and we have to consider how many ways we send it out so that we're not getting the same student responding 5 times.
Okay.
So we have to be kind of mindful of that. But I think it's a great idea to do it maybe even through an advisory class, because not every student is in a PE class, but every student should have some sort of advisory class like that. So
thank you for
thank
thinking.
you.
Yeah, thanks for thinking about
Do
that.
all of the schools have advisory now?
Mm-hmm.
Next year?
Right now
Okay.
they do, yeah. Okay. Well, you asked for feedback about how you'd like this to look next year. I think trends would be important to watch as we go forward, and so we could look at where we were this year and where we are next year. I will love to see the outcomes. I mean, we've got great principals here. I think fundraising is always a question, and that equitable fundraising, I'd love to see how what your thoughts are on that as you come up with those plans. because I know that you're always having conversations about how to make sure that that happens transparently and equitably. And I think keeping the Title IX implications at the forefront is really important. I think it's really easy to say, I'm going to be donating to this one sport because that's where my child is. But I think if there's education about how Title IX is affected by that, I think people want to be supportive of everybody, and make sure it's equitable. I don't think people want that discrepancy to be happening. So if we just, I really like where you're headed with those plans.
And I think one of the
thank you for your
things-
work on that.
To address your point, I mean, this was the first year that we come up with the plans because this is what the bill is, but the bill will require us to tell you next year how we implemented those plans and what the results of them were. So you'll be seeing that piece.
I figured, but I figured it was worth saying. Well, this will be a good thing to see in an ongoing way. Christy?
I don't know if Jenny or Catherine, since we can't see
I can't see them, I know.
Jenny or Catherine, before I ask my question?
You go ahead, Christy. A lot of my questions, sorry, Jenny.
Okay.
A lot of my questions have been asked.
Okay.
So
We
thank
just
you,
couldn't see
and
you,
thanks
so-
to Lydia for weighing in so well. And this was a very interesting presentation. Thank you so much.
So I would just maybe piggyback onto what Melissa was saying around fundraisers. I think that when we find a great model that, how our booster clubs are working, to share the wealth, let's share across our district, what's working, how do you engage parents, how do you engage boosters, grandparents, and also alumni, because I think that, the ticket sales for people to come in and be able to, see some of these great events, that we're putting on. But I would like to see a little bit of that, and when you dive into the fundraising, because that seems to always raise some of our booster clubs do it really well, and some of ours are not really sure how to go about it. The second thing is, I know for a long time we worked really hard to have that relationship with the pools, and I feel like we're still doing pretty well with those relationships. Could we not do the same thing with the golf courses?
The problem with the golf courses, they're run by the PGA, and but each of the teams do have a home course that they work with, and so and I'm going to put out for Highland because I know you have heard about this, and that is that the boys practice at Mountain Dale Golf Course and the girls practice at Golf at the Round. Yes, it is a discrepancy in doing that, but you also have to remember when the boys play and the girls play. Girls start at the end of February, and they go to the 1st of May, and many times we have snow during that time. Right. This issue has been brought up to Utah High School Association. I'm also on a couple of committees there with emerging sports, and also what we can do with the Title IX on changing maybe the boys going into the spring and girls going into the fall, so that they could play at a course that would be more challenging than what the Golf in the Round is. Highland is the only one that does affect the boys and girls at East practice at Bonneville, and the boys and the girls at West practice at Rose Park. So, but we have had that issue brought up, and so Utah High School Association is looking at that, or do we move the season further back into the spring? The problem with that is that we do get caught up with AP and IB testing. And so we do end up missing some of the girls the further we get into that.
So not that I'm advocating, and I have Jeremy sitting here in the audience, that when you think about going up to Mountain Dale, that's much further for Highland to travel than to going to Bonneville. Because Bonneville is just right there off of Foothill.
Because East is already practicing there, so
they won't share.
It's time-wise. It's just
rude.
Come on. Come on, Pam.
Yeah. The problem that we have is because it is run by the PGA, they have even taken down the number of tournaments that the teams can have, let alone trying to get kids on there to practice at the same time.
Okay.
So we have looked into all of that.
The inequity right there with that. Okay.
Yes. And Highlands is the only one that I've had.
Thank you, Christy. Nate, go ahead.
Just staying on the golf discussion.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry. Well, I mean, Well, Glendale's, you know,
I'm kidding.
probably closer than Gulf around, and I wasn't mentioning any of the discussions that, or any of the discussion that we had so far, and I'm wondering if that could be an option.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Glendale Golf Course?
Glendale. Glendale has some of the Granite District School on there already.
Okay.
And in fact, Skyline and Olympus practice at Glendale together. And I know they've been asked to look to see if they can try to separate that.
Okay.
I'm a golfer, so I have a real feel for that sport. So.
Okay, other questions or comments from board members? Lydia?
One more, if that's okay. So I think the Title IX is like I think if students had more information about it, that also might help them advocate for themselves if they have any concerns about equity. So if there could be some like publicization effort of Title IX for students, or like throughout coaches knowing to tell their students, or other ways that students can know about it. That might be good.
So what you would like to see, Lydia, is some training then given to our athletes then on what Title IX is about. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think one, it would help athletes understand like what is an equity violation, what is just like what's happening, and like what needs to happen for logistics. But I also think if there are real equity issues, it would help students advocate for themselves.
I like that. Thank you. Because that does bring a big point up to that. I live Title IX.
Forgot the button.
Where's April?
And Lydia,
Somebody forgot to
so
push.
you know, Title IX is not just sports. So I think that's a great idea. Title IX extends to all of our programs and activities. If we had a concern that a specific CTE course wasn't being offered to boys or to girls, way back in the day, home ec was something that boys didn't take and girls did. And a young woman who went to a counselor to talk about going to college might be told that, take some typing classes because you're going to be a mom. Those things happened. And unfortunately, some of those things still happen today. Title IX is meant to address all of those things. So I think it's a great idea to kind of educate kids a little bit more about what their rights are that way. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Go ahead, Nate.
Maybe just a question on things to look forward to. I know our state legislature passed legislation this last legislative session about transgender student athletes, and I'm wondering if there's any examination that our district can do relative to that, maybe in advocating with our legislature. Are we out of compliance with federal standards? Speaking of equity, I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face relative to Title IX.
I think Tina and I have been really discussing that, and with Christina, and what the implications of that affect our students and how we are going to take care of that. And it looked at each of the training room, or not training rooms, but the locker rooms too, when we were out there, and we discussed that with our ADs about what does that look like for our teams as well as for our schools.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's a good question, Nate.
Just one other comment on that. House Bill 11 is state law now. And so we have had conversations with the AG's office about this as well. Transgender students can try out for sports. They can't compete at this point in time.
Boys to girls.
Yeah. Right.
Boys to male to female.
Transgender students cannot compete according to the law at this point in time. There are lawsuits already in place. We're watching that. We're working with the AG's office. We're trying to do everything we can to advocate for our students while still being compliant with the law. And the Biden administration has said there's more guidance coming to kind of address what's happening. We're keeping up on all of that.
And I guess what I would say is, if you've taken a look at our administrative procedures, we definitely indicate the two prongs, that if this one portion is held unconstitutional, it'll immediately go to the second prong, which is the default under House Bill 11. But we did have discussions with Superintendent Gadsden in terms of what he wanted to do in response to House Bill 11, and he was very clear that based on conversations that he had had with other superintendents and the Attorney General's office, that we would be following the law. So that is what is currently in our policy. And as Tina mentioned, they can participate, male to female, transgender athletes can participate in all aspects of interscholastic sports except for competition. So they can go, they can practice, they can try out, they can do inter-squad things, they just can't compete based on what the current law is. And my understanding is that more things are forthcoming, but there is current legislation. I mean, there's a current lawsuit out there right now, so we'll have to see where that goes, but we definitely have the default in our administrative procedures right now.
Thank you for being on top of that.
So Nate, I just wanted, just in answering that, yes, it is a good discussion that all three of us have been having together and trying to be proactive as we go through that process.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments?
Board Member Kennedy, did you get all your questions answered?
How about you, Jenny? Good? Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Oh, I just received from one of the golf coaches that told me that that Skyline does practice, boys practice up at Mountaindale with them. It's the girls who practice at Glendale together, or Skyline and Olympus.
okay.
So,
Well, on a personal note, Title IX is as old as I am. 50 years old.
No, it's
I'm not.
well,
I'm
it's
not
even
quite.
older than me. I mean, it's even younger than me. I live Title IX.
It's a great deal, and really we've come a long way. So thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Well, that coach, which happened to be my husband.
Yeah, there you go. All right, thank you for that report. Really appreciate you, Missy and Tina and Christina. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to go ahead and move to our discussion agenda, and I want to give these the time they deserve. I think that there's lots of good things on here, but I also think there are things we can move through fairly quickly. The first item on our discussion agenda is the classified common agreement. And Mr. Hall, our Executive Director of Human Resource Services, is here to talk about the classified common agreement. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm quite proud of the work that's gone into this accomplishment. It's been a 6-year process where we've combined 5 different agreements into one. All spring long, my colleagues in HR and I have met with the representatives from each of the 4 classified groups to come together and culminate all of the language into one common agreement for all of our classified employee associations. Most importantly, we've clarified, cleaned it up. It's in one document that's only 34 pages long instead of 5 different documents. And also, the new document provides an opportunity for any of our groups who are unrepresented to meet and confer with the district, to be able to also have an opportunity to engage in discussion about advocating for their representative group. So if there are any questions about this particular agreement, I would be happy to take them and answer any questions that I can. But it's been an awful lot of work that there's been an awful lot of buy-in from each of the employee groups, and we've had great success in making a sound and compact agreement that really will serve the needs of all of our classified employees.
Thank you, Director Hall, and I'd open it up for the rest of the board if there's any questions or comments.
Thanks for the work.
All right, seeing none. And Director Hall, is this something that we are looking to take action on tonight?
I would be great. It's also the first time the board is seeing this, and I understand that it's okay to digest it. It's a large document. It does take a lot of work that's taken place over 6 years, like I mentioned, and so it would be great to have this approved and move forward, but we also understand that it doesn't have to happen tonight.
Thank you.
Do you have anything?
And if you'd like, we could move to the next one and discuss it too, while we wait for President Ford.
Sounds good. Well, let's go ahead and move on to item number 2, our Salt Lake Association of School Administrators written understanding.
Yeah, thank you. This is a similar story, not quite as long in the making, but I've been meeting with our Salt Lake Association of School Administrators to review our written understanding with them. We do this somewhat on a more regular basis, but it hasn't been touched since 2017 when we had some major updates to our evaluation system. Earlier in the spring, the board asked through the board policy committee to put language from our G1 policy into our administrator's written understanding. Everybody at the table agreed. The SLCSD, the SLASA, the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators leadership, and I all agreed about where to put the language right at the very front of the document, cleaned up a lot of our hiring process to make sure that it's much more clear and precise at each of the levels of assistant principals, principals, and district office administrators. So that language has been cleaned up, and it makes it much easier to understand, so that it really is a written understanding moving forward. So again, we would like to have the board consider this for approval, but it's not an urgent matter that has to be done tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We have Cindy Mills representing SLEOPA. So thank you, Cindy, and take your membership. No, we were talking about the classified common agreement, and I know Mr. Hall told everybody what a labor that has been, and what a great thing it is, actually. And so I hope you'll take back to your association that we appreciate the work that they put on this, and I think it's a good thing that we have a common understanding, and the same to you, Principal Rodriguez. I hope you'll share with the SLASA group that that this is a good labor. We like having these agreements, and we like having them current. I am open to moving them to action if the board would like to take action on those tonight. I think it would be good for us to take action, but I'm also happy. I'm waiting if the board wants to take some time to read through them with a little more detail. We know how important these agreements are to these associations, and so I don't want to needlessly delay, but I also want to make sure that the board has a comfort level with them as well. Having seen at least the initiation of this process with the classified agreement, I know that there were lots of players involved that participated in it, and the work was done very carefully and seriously. Is the board interested? I'm open to a motion to move this to action if the board is interested.
President Ford, I move that we move items number 1 and 2, classified common agreement, and the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators written understanding to the action agenda.
And as someone who also watched the process evolve, I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Nate and a second by Catherine that we move the classified common agreement in the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators written understanding to action. Do I have any discussion to that motion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on moving this to action, beginning with Precinct 3 and Dr. Kennedy.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Now, has been our practice, we'll go ahead and take action on this now. So I'm open to entertaining a motion to take action on the classified common agreement as well as the SLASA written understanding.
So moved.
I move that we accept both the classified common agreement and the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators written understanding.
Okay. Motion by Catherine. Nate, do you want to?
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion to the motion? I've said my piece already. Thank you to everybody who's done work on this, and share that with your associations, please. All right. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, beginning with Precinct number 4 and Vice President Salazar.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Thank you. Now we will move to item number 3 on our discussion agenda, which is our McKinney-Vento specialist.
Yes, and that's me again. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here to discuss this. Back in December, approached the board with a need for increasing our services to our homeless youth. And our Student Services Department has been awarded additional grant funds. We have the need in our district with homeless children and youth to need a whole nother person to be able to serve those needs. And so I'm coming to you again with a request to approve a new temporary contract position to fill that need using grant funds that are specifically earmarked for homeless children and youth in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Discussion from the board. Christy.
So, Logan, can you tell us, are the McKinney-Vento specialists, are they assigned to specific schools, or do they work together in collaboration? Can you just give a little bit more detail to what their job description is and what schools they'll be involved in?
Certainly. They do work as a group to decide which schools that they'll service, and so, or provide service to. And so it's not a matter of being assigned to a certain school and that's the only school that they're at. So they work as a group to decide who will accommodate each new request and need.
Mr. Hall, are you comfortable with me inviting Mr. Harmon
I think
to
it
the
would be
table?
great because Mike
I think it would be
here
great, too.
works very
you.
closly with these,
I
folks.
would love to, I mean, like, when you think about what our specialists do, Mike, I would love to hear what their days are like and what they contribute.
I'm getting a little bit of a complex that we have like more people hired. I'm just kidding. Part of the challenge, because we have all this money and a lot of it can only go to salaries and it's one-time money. And so Minnie and I have talked about ways to support students better. And so kind of what our plan is looking like is we would have kind of a high school for each of us. I would still do the administrative piece of, overall thing, but then I want to kind of be assigned typically to Highland and some of those feeder schools, because our high school kids, and we've seen this, are really kind of falling through the cracks in many cases. Across the country, we talked about this last time, we've lost so many McKinney-Vento students. We've been trying to kind of recapture them. And so having Claudia last year was such a game changer for many of our students because she really could spend much more time sitting down with kids and working through individual issues. And so we're like, well, if we have this money for 2 years, let's see if we can duplicate that with another person, maybe having them at West, but then with some of those feeder schools. So we still meet regularly. I'll kind of have East and Horizonte, and then working with those feeder schools around. So as Logan said, it's really a team approach. Clyde and I meet regularly to talk about the needs of our students, and when there's really complex issues, I'll get more involved. But it's nice having people on the ground that have the time to really spend with those students in those schools.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions, either for Mr. Hall or for Mr. Harmon?
Yeah, questions for Mr. Harmon. Mike, one, thanks for all the work that you do. I talk to a lot of community partners and school leaders and parents, and the work that you do doesn't go unnoticed. Certainly valued, and
Appreciate
the work
that.
that your colleagues do in the McKinney-Vento, realm of what we do in the district is so important. I know that this is, kind of, contract limited, so to speak, relative to funding. I know that when we talked about it last time, we talked about some ways that we can kind of measure or identify how valuable these positions are. And do you have any insights onto how you might measure that?
So some things
that
we're tracking is
value over
attendance. That's a huge issue, not just McKinney-Vento students, but a lot of students. And then graduation rates, looking at where kids are coming in at the beginning of the year with their credits, where they're leaving at the end of the year with their credits, and how much closer they are to graduation. So that's one of the things we've really been looking at, especially with our high school students. And then just families accessing resources. So working with the foundation, we're collaborating on our DI grants so that we're able to track those more succinctly. And so how we can support families as well.
Awesome. Well, sweet. I look forward to looking at that progress over this next year.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions, Lydia?
Question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
First, do you have an estimate on how many students experiencing homelessness there are in the district currently?
So none right now because we're out of school. Right? So at the end of each year, those numbers drop off, and then as they register, we start building that number back up again. We ended last year with around 700, which we know is underrepresented, right? And so at any given time throughout the year, we're typically between 9 and 1,100. And so last year's numbers were down. And that's happened since COVID. And again, it's not just in our district, it's across the country. We're seeing those numbers down. We know that families aren't being housed, right? They're just either not in school or they're not representing their living situation. So that's kind of where we're at. At the end of last year, I think we ended, I want to say like 704, like the last day of school, if I'm remembering correctly.
And are there ways for students who may have families that are misrepresenting their living situation to still access the resources from employees like this, like the one proposed to be hired?
Yeah, so it's hard because, but typically what happens with, it's a referral. So let's say that you're having housing issues and you disclose that to a teacher, then they'll usually reach out to one of us or talk to the counselor at the school. They'll reach out and then we'll work with the student and the family and try and identify them, right, to see if their living situation currently qualifies for McKinney-Vento services, and then we provide those resources. If they didn't qualify, we would still provide resources through the foundation or the family support center at the school. We want to make sure that any family that needs resources has them, regardless of their living situation.
That's
Thank
such a,
you.
That's such a
Absolutely.
great thought, Lydia. Thank
Absolutely.
you. We definitely want to make sure every student has everything they need.
For sure.
And Mr. Harmon and these specialists deal with a very specific group of students who have very high needs as well. So it's also your connecting role.
Absolutely.
Too, making
Yep.
sure that
And
kids get
if
connected
they're
to
not
what they
with
need.
our services, we find what we can provide supports for them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other questions? Is the board prepared to move this to action? Okay.
President Ford, I move that we move the McKinney-Vento specialist proposal to the action agenda.
Thank you, Bryce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Mohammed, second by Mohammed, yeah. All right, thank you. If there's no discussion to moving this to action, we'll go ahead and vote on moving this to action, starting with Board Member Bade in Precinct 5.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Trustee Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll now go ahead and take action on the McKinney-Vento specialist.
President Ford, I move that we accept the McKinney-Vento specialist proposal for one additional specialist.
Thank you, Bryce, for that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mohammed. Any discussion to this motion? Again, with gratitude. Thank you. And Mike, thank you for the work.
Yeah,
Really,
Thank you.
it's important, and we appreciate it. Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion, which is that we approve the McKinney-Vento specialist. And that starts with Precinct 6, which is me, Melissa Ford, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
All right, thank you. All right, next item on our discussion agenda is an organization change proposal. And for that, I'm going to let Alan address the board.
So as noted in the memo attached to the agenda, when Paul Schulte was originally made the executive director over auxiliary services, and that might not have been the title when he was first put out there, but we'll just go with it. The two auxiliary service departments of child nutrition and transportation are reported directly to him. At some point in the last several years, that was moved to report directly to the business administrator. The proposal here is that we move those auxiliary departments back to report directly to the auxiliary or the executive director of auxiliary services, knowing that the business administrator still does have responsibility to monitor every department that's under my org chart area. And I will continue to do so.
Thank you, Alan. Discussion from the board about this proposal. Nobody wants to discuss it. Okay. Well,
Do you want a motion to move it to
I
action?
do.
Okay, I move that we move the organization change proposal to action.
Thank you. Christy, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mohammed. Okay, is there any discussion to moving this to action? Seeing none, we'll vote beginning with Precinct 7 and Board Member Sweat.
Christie Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes. Let's go ahead and take action on the proposal for this organizational chart. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mohammed and seconded by Christie. Thank you. Any discussion to the motion? Thank you. Thank you, Alan, for this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Schulte, for your leadership. And I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and vote on the motion, beginning with Precinct 1 and Bryce Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed,
Catherine
yes.
Kennedy, yes.
Sorry, forgot you, Kevin.
Mohammed, yes. Melissa Ford, yes.
Christie Sweat, yes.
I wasn't voting for you, Mohammed. I just
it's
was
all right.
repeating your vote. Thank you. Just thank you. Okay, last item on our discussion agenda is the bond council procurement process. And for that discussion, I'm going to let Business Administrator Kersley begin.
So as was listed in the consent agenda today, through RFSQ process, we have selected two architects to begin the feasibility study for a potential rebuild of West and Highland. Knowing that we would need to bond for those projects, the next step in the process is to begin the process to get a contract with a bond counsel firm, so they can help us prepare for potential bond election in November of 2023.
Okay, discussion from the board.
Go ahead, you go.
Go ahead, Bryce.
You've kind of said it already, Alan, but I just want to be clear that this is a feasibility study. No final decisions have been made. I'm getting a lot of emails from my constituents thinking the board and the district has already made final decisions, and I just think it's best to hear that that is not the case right now.
Feasibility study to see what's possible and get some estimates of how much it would cost, so then we can plan for things in the future.
Thank you.
And hear from constituent input.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Thank you, Catherine. Go ahead, Christy.
So tonight, there was a comment that was made in one of the requests to speak in regards to, the inequity of a East Side school or West Side school. Is that what?
No, just...
I didn't understand if that went, where that came from. Does that have to do with the bonding of Highland and East? I mean,
Well,
Highland
the
and-
comment referenced the property tax increase.
And so I thought if we needed to do a better job of making sure of saying exactly what you're saying, Bryce, that there is a step, there's a process that we go through, because I know there was some miscommunication out there thinking that it was already set in stone, that we were moving forward and we had picked architects and everything else. So I appreciate us making this as a very transparent, process. So when you look at the bond process, Ellen, what's different in the law than when it used to be? We bonded 20 years ago. My understanding is that we can't actively be involved. Is that, or do we need a Bond 101 class?
Well, and that's part why we want bond counsel to
Okay.
guide us through that process and make sure we comply with all the rules and regulations. Largely as a board, we lay out the facts. We don't sway one or another. We lay out the facts and why this is needed, and that's it. But bond counsel will be the firm that will help guide us through it and make sure we follow all the rules.
Okay, so one last question. So we've got Highland and West that we'd be looking at. Are there also other things that we're going to be looking at in a feasibility study? Or is it just focused on those two schools right now?
Those are the two main ones. We do have a third RFSQ that will look at everything else district-wide and what our future needs would be. So as we do go to bond election, if there's other items we need to add in there in order to pay for them, we would have that information.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Nate, go ahead.
I think just one point of clarification as well, Christy and Bryce. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, Alan, you can correct me, but that architects will be a part of that feasibility study, just relative to the expertise that they have relative to
Right.
building new buildings or renovating.
I knew that, yeah.
current building. And Alan, I'm wondering if it's too late in this RFSQ process, and if it is, I understand that, but please remind me, it's been a little bit of time since we talked about this last, but would that study also include potential land use outside of what the physical buildings might need or what they could be in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't built that third RFSQ, we haven't built yet. So it's not too late to, if there's other items we want to make sure somebody looks at to help us with their expertise, we can add those things in.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe just for clarity, Nate, I don't want to interrupt you if you're not done. We approved feasibility studies for Highland and West on our consent agenda. And those will move forward, and that's an important part of that process. Those are feasibility studies. We're not done yet. But this discussion is about bond counsel and procuring bond counsel in order to help us determine what our needs might be and what that process is for asking our citizens our constituents to approve a bond. And to what Christy's saying, I think we absolutely ought to do a bond 101 and have that discussion. We've done it before. I think we ought to do it again. But I'll speak in favor of having bond counsel help guide us through the process. So I'm in support of doing a procurement process for bond counsel. Other comments from board members? Okay, if there's none, then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to move this to action.
President Ford, I move that we move discussion agenda number 5, bond counsel procurement process, to the action agenda.
I'll second.
Second by Catherine. Motion by Nate, second by Catherine to move this to action. If there's no discussion for moving this to action, then we'll go ahead and vote, beginning with you, Board Member Sika, Precinct 2.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Okay. So this topic of bond counsel, procurement process is now on the action agenda. I'm open to entertaining a motion to take action on bond counsel procurement process.
President Ford, I move that we accept the bond counsel procurement process.
Thank you, Catherine. Actually, you were beat by just a second by Mohammed, and Christy seconded. Any discussion to the process, or to the motion? Sorry. Nate?
No discussion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. I think this is an exciting thing we're undertaking, and I'm excited to watch it unfold. All right. Thank you. Let's go ahead and vote, this time beginning with Precinct 3 and Dr. Kennedy.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Okay.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Jenny, yes. Thank you, Jenny. All right, that concludes our discussion agenda as well as our action agenda. And so now it's time on our agenda for board member reports. If board members would like to make a report.
I have a reminder.
Okay, go ahead, Christine.
Catherine, do you want to do the pre-delegate and delegate assembly for USBA?
I'm happy to, or I'm happy to let you do it too, Christy, whichever you prefer.
I'll go ahead and do it for you if that's...
It's great.
So
I've got a barking dog here, so that would be great.
Okay, so we've got this month, the 26th and the 27th. The 26th is the pre-delegate assembly, and the 27th is the delegate assembly for Utah School Boards Association. Just as a reminder, Nate and Bryce, you are our delegates, and Melissa and I are the alternates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Catherine also serves as a vote, for us. Catherine and I will have a board meeting on the 19th at USBA. So if you have any feedback that you'd like to give to us, that would be a great time, because I think all of you know what the legislative priorities, JLC's been held. And then obviously Alan's been involved in a lot of those conversations too. I think one of the things that we're going to see come forward is a conversation around our trust lands to make sure that that is a secure fund and that, you know, there wouldn't be any reason to think that the fund would ever be raided, you know, in any way, shape, or form. So if you have any suggestions or any comments that you'd like Catherine and I to bring forward at our meeting on the 19th, please give us a call and let us know. Otherwise, I think they've got a great night planned. You know, I think, have you received your packets? So they've received their packets, and you can see that it's at the Canyons building. So anything else, Catherine, that I missed? Okay.
That was great, Christy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy. Do I have anybody else who'd like to make a board report? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and do my standard. Thank you so much. I'll say it until my dying breath. Thank you so much. The work that happens in this district is amazing. The fierceness of my loyalty to Salt Lake City sometimes surprises me, but I love this district. I'm glad it's been my home for the last 22 years. And in a personal note, I seem to keep collecting children, so I'm going to have another 16-year-old in the Salt Lake City School District starting in on August 30th, and I'm thrilled about that. And you know, knowing that he's struggled in other locations, it was, you know, sort of a no-brainer for me. I'm going to bring him to Salt Lake, where we take care of our kids. And so I'm excited about that, and I really cannot express enough gratitude to all of you who have you know, been with us through the last several years of challenge and success. And I'm proud of the work we do. So thank you, and have a good night, and we'll see you in September. Take care.
Thank you.